Forget Miami versus Fort Lauderdale. The most interesting real estate in South Florida is happening right in the middle. From Mediterranean mansions and Hollywood lakes to modern high-rises on the sand, Hollywood is the zip code that finally lets you have it all. In this video, we're zooming into the three distinct worlds of Hollywood. We'll cover the luxury waterfront of the lakes, the walkable vibe of downtown and Young Circle, the best value suburbs west of I-95, and so much more. By the end, you'll know exactly which Hollywood zip code fits your lifestyle and your budget. If this is your first time on the channel and you want to know everything about living in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and the surrounding cities like Hollywood, then subscribe below so you can be the first to know about our current market in Fort Lauderdale. My name is Hector Valdes, and I was born, raised, and have lived in South Florida my entire life. We have people just like you reach out to us each week. My team and I love helping people make their move to Fort Lauderdale, whether it's 9 days or 9 months. Feel free to reach out. Our contact information is in the description below, and we'd be happy to help you make a smooth move to Fort Lauderdale. And if you stay until the end of the video, I'll show you one of Hollywood's best neighborhoods that you wouldn't expect. And I think you'll be surprised at how close it is to the beach while feeling a world away. So let's get started. All right, so here we are on the map. We're going to outline Hollywood so you can see the boundary of the city and how it relates to everything that we're going to talk about today. So we're essentially going to start in the south. We're going to start over by the beach, and then we're going to go all the way up. So Hollywood Beach is actually pretty long. It goes all the way up to here and then kind of comes down. Dania Beach is kind of the city that's adjacent, kind of in the little area right there immediately to the west of this big park area. And then it's going to cross over this way and then come up and then come across. So it's a little bit squiggly, but I want to give you just kind of a general idea of the outline of Hollywood. Then it does come west a bit, and then it kind of does this little kind of zigzag thing again. Comes over and then comes down the turnpike and then comes across Pembroke Road and then comes down again to meet the beach. So essentially that's the outline of Hollywood. As to the best of my ability, from what I know and from what I've seen, that's essentially the boundary. Now, obviously, this boundary doesn't, it's a little bit odd, as often happens with a lot of cities in terms of like what determines their boundaries, but it's going to give us a rough estimate of where the city is located, and then we're going to talk about some key things throughout the city. So you're always going to start on the east, and you're going to start with the beach area, and then you're going to go into kind of a downtown, which is just west of the beach, and then you're essentially going to go into more of the suburban area heading out west. And that's pretty true of most of the cities in South Florida, and that's certainly the case with Hollywood. Although I do have to say what's special about Hollywood is that price points are a little bit easier to navigate, and it does have its own kind of uniqueness in terms of other Florida cities, which we're going to talk about today. So let's start over in Hollywood Beach. So one of the things I want to discuss is the Broadwalk. So it's a concrete walk. I actually it kind of reminds me a little bit of like Venice in California, if you're from California, except it's a little bit, I believe, shorter and a little different, but it faces the beach. There's a lot of little like restaurants and all kinds of little shops and things like that. So along this area, you're also going to find a lot of different condos. Most of them are older, but there's definitely a mix. There's smaller buildings, there's taller buildings, there's a little bit of everything. You also have a lot of hotels. It does tend to be a bit touristy because of the beach. I would say that compared to other South Florida beaches, Hollywood Beach is a little bit unique, a little bit different. I think each of our beaches here have something special, and that's definitely the case with Hollywood. Kind of going down into this area down here, there's a few things. This is obviously away from the Broadwalk. So you just have condos dotted along this whole drive on Ocean Drive going all the way down. But down here, there's going to be the Diplomat, which is a hotel, which is a big high-rise. It's actually really significant on the skyline of Hollywood Beach. It has a very unique look. So you have the Diplomat, and then you have the Hyde Beach Resort, which is essentially kind of like an Airbnb-friendly type of building. So you can buy a condo there and rent it as much as you like. You can rent it 365 days a year. And you also have the Tides, which is also a significant building in terms of being able to rent it out daily. Now, I do have to say about Hollywood condos, which is probably a general rule of thumb, for most condos in South Florida, and certainly the case for Hollywood, is that you really have to watch what you're looking at because a lot of the buildings are older. Some have fallen into a bit of disrepair. Some have been updated, but it's important to navigate that because we have a lot of new rules and regulations regarding structural integrity of condos in South Florida. So it's important to keep an eye out for that. So just wanted to mention that about Hollywood Beach. So the next area that we're going to talk about is Hollywood Lakes. So they're actually not really lakes. They start up at Johnson Street, and as you can see, it's actually connected to the Intracoastal. You have these two identical lake areas, and then it cuts across, and it pretty much runs pretty close to Federal Highway, which is US 1. So one of the things that's notable about this area is that you're going to have a lot of these kind of like very Mediterranean type of looking mansions from like the days of yore. Like a lot of these houses were built essentially back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So they have this kind of like grand, almost like Hollywood, California type of look to them. I know it's kind of a little bit of a pun that Hollywood, Florida would be similar to Hollywood, California, but there's definitely, you can kind of feel that when you're there in the Hollywood Lake. So there are waterfront homes in this neighborhood. You do have access to go out from the lake and actually go into the Intracoastal and make it out to the ocean. So that's really nice. There's a little drive that kind of wraps around both lakes. So you actually are able to see the waterfront, which is nice because you don't always get that in some of the waterfront neighborhoods, especially in Fort Lauderdale. And the nice thing about Hollywood Lakes is that it's kind of like in the middle between the beach and kind of like downtown Fort Lauderdale and Young Circle. So you have accessibility to be able to get over to the beach really rather quickly. Like, I mean, it literally doesn't even take 5 minutes to get there. So that's kind of nice. If you like the beach and you have some money to live in a nice neighborhood like this, a lot of people are really gonna love that, and a lot of people do. And then if you wanna enjoy a nice meal at a restaurant, or you wanna go out to a bar or a lounge, you can get over to downtown Hollywood, which is not bad at all. If you are on Hollywood Boulevard, which is this main road here, this is actually a really beautiful road. One of the things about Hollywood Lakes too is that it has a lot of beautiful palm trees, so it's really, really scenic. So if you drive down Hollywood Boulevard, you're going to get over to Young Circle, which is essentially right here. So Young Circle has a couple of condo buildings that were built kind of in the mid-2000s. There's more buildings coming up. There's a lot of rental buildings as well. So the area is getting quite a bit built up. And then if you go out from this area, Young Circle, all the way up to Dixie Highway, this is essentially downtown Hollywood. So in this area, you're gonna find a lot of restaurants, bars, lounges. It is not a huge downtown. It's super walkable, pretty easy to get parked most of the time. It has kind of like a nice mix of different types of restaurants. There's Greek restaurant, there's an Indian restaurant, Mediterranean. So it's kind of a nice mix of very ethnic, cool type of places to go out to eat. Young Circle also has the Arts Park Amphitheater. What's nice about this is that the amphitheater hosts a lot of free concerts throughout the year. You're also going to have, they do some movie nights, I believe. So it's kind of a nice place where people gather. So if you have a family and you want to go out on the weekend and actually like enjoy some of the fresh air that we have here, obviously during the right time of year, which is the winter and spring, then that's definitely something that you can do there, and it's very enjoyable. The next area we're going to talk about is Royal Point Sienna, which is right over here, and then the areas kind of south of there, Highland Gardens, you have Liberia to the north, North Central, and I would say that this is a little bit of a hodgepodge, these neighborhoods. You have some older homes, but you also have some duplexes in there, and I think that there's a few smaller apartment buildings. So it is a bit of a mixed neighborhood in terms of like what's available, not quite as pristine as something like Hollywood Lake, but if you're looking for an investment property, this is probably a good area to look in because you're gonna get more value, and then you're also gonna be able to find like a duplex or a triplex that you can invest in and effectively rent out. We're going to talk about the next neighborhood. It's going to go a little bit further west, and this is where it's going to become a little bit more suburban in nature. Okay, so as we travel on the other side of I-95, so I-95 is kind of the major highway in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale and Hollywood, that kind of cuts through and it becomes kind of our main artery. The neighborhood's going to change pretty dramatically. So this highway, I'm going to highlight I-95, and we're going to talk also about all the different locations that you can get to from Hollywood. I'm going to highlight I-95 on the map where the red line is. And that's going to be our divider. So there's definitely a couple of neighborhoods that are significant that we need to talk about. And I want to make sure that you guys are aware of. So the first one we're going to talk about is Emerald Hills. So this is a very nice and upscale neighborhood just west of I-95. Definitely homes in this area are going to be in the $1 million range. They're very, very nice. They're on large lots, etc. And it's a very ritzy neighborhood, but definitely very suburban. The next neighborhood north of there is Maple Ridge and Oakridge. Both these neighborhoods are actually gated. They're very kind of influenced by very strong HOAs. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this area up here. And it is also a very nice area. Not quite as expensive as Emerald Hills, but still nice nonetheless. Now, if you want true value in Hollywood, you get definitely the most bang for your buck, I would say, in Hollywood Hills, which is kind of a contradiction because there's no hills there. So I want to make sure to clarify that to everyone. Definitely no hills in Hollywood Hills, but the neighborhood is called Hollywood Hills, and there is a lot of nice homes in this area for the money. So I'm going to highlight this area in here. So it's a pretty big area, and what's nice here is that the lots are huge. Most of the homes have at least a one-car garage. The majority were built essentially between 1950s, 60s, and 70s. So they were built as a kind of classic, like 3 to 4 bedroom home with 2 bathrooms or more. They tend to be pretty good square footage. I would say anywhere from like about 1,300 to 2,000 square feet. The homes are super nice, I would say, for the most part, considering, what you're going to be paying for them. The starting range in that neighborhood is about $600,000 and above. And by South Florida standards, that's actually not a lot of money. So you're able to get in with, essentially if you're a dual income family and you are making probably, I would say, in excess of a household income of $200,000, which can be pretty common, you could probably get into Hollywood Hills fairly easily in a home that's actually pretty decent. A few more things I wanted to mention on the map in terms of proximity to Hollywood Hills is the yellow-green farmers market, which is right here. So this is essentially just off Sheridan, which is this main road right through here, which heads east over to the beach. So yellow-green farmers market is only open on Saturday and Sunday. It's a huge farmers market. It's really cool. Definitely something you want to check out if you're a resident in the area of Hollywood. The other thing I wanted to note on here is this large park. I'm going to call it TY Park. It's kind of like a very complex Indian name, which I cannot pronounce, like Tanunji or something like that, but everyone calls it TY Park. So it's a nice big park. They do a Renaissance festival there once a year. So there's a big gathering where everyone dresses in Renaissance clothing, and they do, they have a festival there, and it's quite popular. The next area that we're going to talk about, we're going to go down south a bit, and we're going to highlight this area, which is called Hillcrest. So this area down here is pretty much dominantly condos. So a lot of these condos were, again, very similar to the rest of Hollywood. They were built in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. A lot of these condo buildings are large buildings with beautiful views of the water. However, the one thing to note about Hillcrest is that most of the condo buildings are actually over 55. So you have to be 55 years or older to live in the majority of that community. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule. There's a few of them over there, but I would say probably a good chunk, like 80%, is actually going to be over 55, so something to note. Also wanted to mention Hollywood Memorial Regional Hospital, which is right over here. It's kind of a main hospital, so it's nice to have that nearby as well. So obviously a lot of these kind of main roads, like for example, Hollywood Boulevard, which is down here, and you kind of see these really cool circles. They're really fun to drive around when you're driving through town. Has a lot of businesses on there. There's, Publix, and there's a Target, and there's all kinds of different things that you need. So it's, in terms of that, there's a lot of availability for all the shopping that you may need, pharmacies, etc. So we're going to talk about some other key destinations which are a little bit further out from Hollywood, how to get there, and distances, etc. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the Seminole Casino. So the Hard Rock Casino, which is right over here outlined in red. So this is a very popular destination. They have the big guitar hotel, which is really popular. I'm sure you probably have seen pictures of it online or on TV, but it's definitely a very quintessential hard rock image of the guitar, and it's quite an impressive sight. If you're driving on the turnpike, I've seen it many times. They do all kinds of different light shows on the hotel. It's quite a sight, really, really cool. So I really think you're gonna like the next location I'm gonna talk about. So it's actually not in Aventura, but it's a big destination for shopping. And I love to shop, and I'm sure that you probably do too. So one huge destination is the Aventura Mall. So Aventura, I'm gonna highlight it down here, is kind of a little bit further south, and there's different ways to get into Aventura. So I have to say it's actually one of the top shopping destinations actually in the country. I worked in retail for a long time, and one of our top stores for many companies was actually located in the Aventura Mall. So if you're over in Hollywood, like let's say you're over in the Lakes area and you want to get over to Aventura Mall, the easiest thing that you could probably do is just go down Hollywood Boulevard and then take US 1 Federal Highway down into Miami, and you're at the Aventura Mall. Depending on traffic, I would probably say this is going to be probably a solid 20 to 25 minutes. So you're over in this area, Hollywood Hills, and you want to get to Aventura Mall. Well, easy enough. You go to Hollywood Boulevard, you take I-95 going south, and then you're going to take Ives Dairy Road into Aventura. I would say it's probably going to be about the same. I would say probably anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. There's absolutely no traffic, maybe 15, but there's almost always traffic on I-95 almost any time of the day these days for some reason. So important to note that. But again, such an amazing destination to have so close to Hollywood and have access to that, I think is a huge perk. Definitely a positive. Another huge perk in terms of the location of Hollywood is the proximity to Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. So obviously it's partially called the Hollywood Airport. So it is basically located almost in Hollywood. So it's gonna be super close. I would say from anywhere in Hollywood, it's probably gonna be 10, 15 minutes. If you're a little bit closer, it could be as short as 5 minutes. So that's really great. And essentially what you're gonna do is that you can take either I-95 or Federal Highway right into that area. Again, if you were in Hollywood Lakes, you would get on US 1, go straight into the airport, and there's on-ramps from US 1 to get straight into the terminal. Or if you're over in Hollywood Hills, you would take I-95. I-95 is gonna zip you along, and then you're gonna take the 595 and then come straight into the airport. So really easy to get over there. Obviously it's an international airport. You can pretty much fly almost anywhere in the nation from there. There is an option if you wanted to fly out of Miami, but Miami's gonna definitely take longer. It's probably going to be anywhere from probably more like 45 minutes because again, the traffic on I-95, and then once you're in Miami, it's like a whole other level of the amount of traffic you're going to have to essentially endure. And I zoomed out on the map so you can really see on the map, essentially, Hollywood is kind of way up here. Here's the airport. So obviously Fort Lauderdale is always gonna make sense. But if you wanted to, obviously, if you're going to fly to some special location in Europe, I heard recently that, you can fly to different types of destinations out of Miami that you can't really fly out of Fort Lauderdale. Then that's a whole different story. Then essentially you would get on I-95 or the turnpike. So you could also take the turnpike because the turnpike and I-95 actually connect right here, and then I-95 continues south, and you're going to take this to the Airport Expressway, which goes this way, and you're straight into Miami Airport. So it's a bit of a commute, but obviously it's not too far away, but I would say you definitely need to plan accordingly because of the traffic. So what's Hollywood's best kept secret in terms of neighborhoods? That is going to be Westlake Village. So you have obviously South Lake and North Lake, and then you're gonna have Westlake. So there's a little community over here, which essentially runs towards Johnson Street, and it's a little bit of an interesting neighborhood. I know it quite well. This neighborhood is really kind of a cool little pocket. And the reason is because it really is an HOA and it feels very suburban. And it feels like it could be somewhere out west, but meanwhile, it's like very much on the east side, and it's very, very close. You essentially have Ann Cobb Park, and you have the Westlake Park. So you have that all along this area right here, and you have the beach super close, and it's a really nice neighborhood. The homes are kind of like very Mediterranean. Most of the single family homes are 2 stories. The townhomes are great layouts. They're nice and they're spacious. They have these really beautiful front courtyards, and the neighborhood in general is super nice. And I would generally say that most people don't even realize it's there. And it's a super attainable price point. Single family homes there start in kind of the 600, 700 range. So actually not too different from Hollywood Hills, but you're so much closer to the beach. And people really love that. So that's a really great thing to have this accessibility of this like nice little pocket so close to the beach and so close to, obviously a nice neighborhood like Hollywood Lakes. Whether it's the morning surf on the beach, a bike ride through Westlake, or a quiet sunset in Hollywood Hills, this city offers a pace of life you won't find in Miami or Fort Lauderdale. It's a perfect middle ground that doesn't feel like a compromise. If this is your first time on the channel and you want to know everything about living in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and the surrounding cities like Hollywood, then subscribe below so you can be the first to know about our current market in Fort Lauderdale. My name is Hector Valdes. I'm born, raised, and have lived in South Florida my entire life. We have people just like you reach out to us each week. My team and I love helping people make their move to Fort Lauderdale or Hollywood, whether it's 9 days or 9 months. Feel free to reach out. Our contact info is in the description below, and we'd be happy to help you make a smooth move to our area. See you next time.